Hi, my name is Brian Caffo. I'm in the Department of Biostatistics at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. And this is the second lecture on Shiny, which I'm calling Shinier, from the Coursera Data Science specialization in the Data Products class. The whole series, and as well as this class, is co-taught by my good friends Jeff Leake and Roger Pang. Okay. So last time we covered very basic Shiny, just how do you set up a UI, how do you set up the server, and how do you get a very basic interactive web page built in R. And if you're like most people, you found the building the user interface pretty trivial, but had a hard time with the server.r part and interacting with it because Shiny behaves very differently than an ordinary R session. So what we're just going to do is cover some more of the details of Shiny, and since the writing of that first lecture, a more detailed tutorial has come out, and it's really great, so I would just go check that out as well. Okay. So let's just first start talking about what server.r is doing. So if you put some code before the Shiny server function in the server.r file, that just gets called once when you do run app. Code inside the unnamed function right here in the Shiny server statement, that gets executed every time there's a page refresh or a new user hits the website. Okay, so this stuff, the stuff that's executed before the Shiny server function, gets executed once run app is called. And the rest gets executed every single time there's a page refresh or a new user. And then reactive code are codes that are inside the render statements, for example, render plot or render text statements in the Shiny server statement, and those get run repeatedly as needed when new values are entered into the widgets from UI.R. Okay, so let's just go through some experimental code. I'll look at the code here, and then I'll call up this app in just a second. All of this code is on the GitHub repository. So we're going to do a page with sidebar. This is the UI. I just put hello Shiny there because that was in the tutorial, and I don't know why I keep doing it. So I'm just going to have two things, text input 1 and text input 2. So I'm going to have two text input boxes, and then here I'm going to output a bunch of text, and you'll see what my goal is in the outputting the text. Notice the input text labels. The input text labels are text 1 and text 2, and it looks. Oh, I'm sorry. That's the input IDs are text 1 and text 2. The labels is this is just the text that it's going to put in the text box that you type into, and the output is maybe confusingly labeled text 1, text 2, text 3, text 4, and text 5. Okay, let's look at what server is doing. Okay, so here's what I'm doing. I'm using the double arrow sign just to make sure that everything is assigned outside of all environments and globally assigned. Probably that's not necessary for these things that are outside of the Shiny server function, but maybe might be necessary inside here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a variable x, and I'm going to increment it +1. So I'm going to define x in R before I run app, and then I'm going to set this variable y to be 0, and then inside the Shiny server function, I'm going to increment it once. So here in output text 4, I'm going to render y. In output text 5, I'm going to render x. In output text 1, I'm just going to render what got input in the text 1 input box. in output text2, I'm going to render what got input in the text2 input box. In output text3, I'm going to take text1 and I'm going to add 1. Okay, so let's try this. Okay, so here I have my server.r code, and let me just type run app. There's a thing called display mode, but let me just run it normally right now. Okay, and here it is. Okay, so you can see it says hello shiny. Okay, and in output text1 we haven't input anything, so that value is still null, so when it prints it out it's printing out nothing. Output text2 we haven't input anything, so that's still null. Output text3, it's trying to add 1 to a value of null, so that returns an NA. Okay, and I've set x to 0 and then added 1 to it, and so now it's 1, and y, which was set to 0 inside the function and is now set as 1. Let's see what happens when we refresh. Okay, sorry, this was y. So now notice y is incremented to 2, but x is still incremented to 1. Okay, and actually if I wanted to do this, let me do this correctly. I'm going to stop that. Stop running the app. I want to set x to 0 in the environment here. There we go. Okay, so here you can see now x is 1 because it's incremented it once at the start of the run app statement. Okay, and y, here's x right here, and here's y right here. Okay, let's refresh. See, now y is 2 because it's executing this statement every single time there's a page refresh or a new user. Okay, now let's input some text. Let's input x, the first text1, let's input as 2. Now notice it's 2, and then here it's at 3 because this text is the text1 input plus 1. Okay, now let's try inputting 5 for this guy. Okay, now it's 5. Now notice what happens if I change text2 to 6, right? Notice it updated this, but it didn't do anything to that. It waits until I update it, and then it does. So Shiny only executes what's needed, only the component of the code that's needed. And so the biggest mistake you can make in a Shiny app is to think of the Shiny function as something where the code just runs through it serially. These reactive text statements, these reactive code statements are reacting to the widget input and in a manner that doesn't necessarily rerun this text, right? It doesn't necessarily rerun this one when you input a new value for this one. Okay. Okay, so that was our first example. Let's move on to another example. Actually, now that I look at the notes, let's just discuss it. Okay, so when you type run app, hitting refresh increments y, but entering values in the text box does not increment y. You have to do a page refresh, or a new user would have to connect. X is always 1 because that only gets executed once at the start of server.r. And then watch how text1 and text2 are updated as needed, and it doesn't add 1 to text1 every time a new text2 is input. Important to do this, I think, try run app and then display.mode equals showcase. That's very useful for seeing what Shiny is actually executing at the time that it's